Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris, and welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. All right, for this week's episode, I want to talk about time. My father-in-law is one of those guys who'd rather do something himself than pay someone else to do it for him. Some people are the pay others type, and some are the do it themselves type. I'm the pay others type, but I envy my father-in-law's vast knowledge, and I call him for help fixing things at least monthly. In his 60s, he was changing his own oil in his car. And I mean, he'd drive the car up on little metal ramps in his garage, get on a wheeled cart, get underneath the car, and do everything himself. It'd take him a little more than an hour, and then he'd drive over to Jiffy Lube to dispose of the oil. I just drive to Jiffy Lube first and let them do the whole thing. And the reason I do this is because Jiffy Lube charges me around $40 for the whole thing, and they do it in 30 minutes. And I can respond to emails while I'm waiting. If I do it myself, I still have to buy $20 worth of oil and filter, and then spend an hour doing the oil change. An hour I'll never get back. So the trade-off becomes, is the $20 I'd save doing it myself worth the hour of my time? And the answer is emphatically no. I make more than $20 an hour. The average salary in America is around $65,000 a year, which divides out to about $30 an hour. And that means the average person should not be changing their own oil. The process has been streamlined and commoditized enough to where it just makes sense to pay for the service. Just like most people don't sew their own clothes or raise their own cows for milk and meat either. It was probably 20 years ago I started doing this math on pretty much anything where I had to decide whether to do it myself or pay to have it done. It puts an objective criteria on the decision, and the only times I go against what the math is telling me is if I really have a burning desire to learn how to do something, because I feel like that knowledge will serve me in some way in the future. But the one place I never thought about doing that math was in my actual job. The job I worked 2,500 hours a year doing. Because just like I'd never get back the hour changing my oil, I'll also never get back the time I spend working. It's gone, forever, for all of us. And I don't bemoan this, it's just a fact of life, but it also means I don't want to just trade away those hours for just a paycheck. Those hours are too big a chunk of my life, of all our lives. I know it's much easier said than done, but it's really important you love what you do. Or at the very least, if you don't love what you do, it's important the job you don't love is one that'll open doors in the near future for careers you will love. On last week's Talent Tuesday episode, I spoke about getting back to the basics of what your people expect out of you and your organization. And the very first thing I mentioned was the desire to get better at things that aren't related to the job. Things that'll build their resume and make them more marketable. These are the things that make people believe the time they invest is worth it. I don't need to know how to change my own oil, so Jiffy Lube can continue doing it for me. But even though it's cheaper to pay someone to wash my car in 10 minutes than it would be to spend an hour washing it myself, the time I get with my son doing it together makes it worth it. The cost-benefit analysis of time versus money says to pay somebody to wash my car every time, but I remember washing my dad's car with him and how great it was spending that time with him, and that added element tips the scales the other way. If you're a leader of people, you'll never be able to pay anyone enough to make the job worth the paycheck. Your employees need to feel like they're getting something else out of it too. Or they'll get more value out of the transaction by working less hard. The paycheck is extrinsic reward. So that means even if you pay somebody way more than the job is even worth, eventually the novelty of that paycheck will wear off and the employee will disengage. It's no different than how we get excited about the idea of getting into a brand new car and driving it off the lot knowing it's ours. But by the 12th payment, the excitement is worn off, and now the payment feels like it's too much for what we're getting in return. The first payment was totally worth it. We got a car and we got that feeling. But once the feeling goes away, we get a more accurate picture of the perceived value of the transaction. So how do you increase the perceived value of the job for your employees? You give them training, knowledge, skills, and responsibilities that aren't directly related to their actual job. You stretch them. You develop their leadership skills. You help them accomplish their educational goals, either with money or, equally important, with flexibility of time and work-life balance. There are people all over who could easily change companies and make more money doing the exact same job. If they can do this and they aren't, it's because they're getting something else besides their salary. Find out what those things are for each of your people and find ways of helping them get those things. You'll be surprised just how engaged they become. Thanks for listening and have a great day.